Hi guys, welcome back to Crafty Quilting Designs. I hope you are really well and having such a really great day. It's a beautiful day here in London. Well, it's probably around 5:30 in the evening. So today's tutorial is making a zipper tote quilted jelly roll bag. Now with this particular block, I call it a twist and turn, and you can make a quilt from it, but I decided was to make one block and take you through the process of making the bag, hence the reasons where I said why you can use that particular block as a quilt. And it's really nice as well. I think you'll really love it. Now you can use some scrappy jelly rolls if you want to do this, and I have used just one strip set to create the bag. It's absolutely lovely. Let me show it to you now. So you will go through the process of doing some quilting, which I think is really good. So it's like a little sort of quilting tutorial as well. So I did spend a lot more time on doing the quilting. Now this is the bag. Okay, so this is a twist and turn pattern that I'm actually referring to, and I used the rest of the strip set to do the back, and again a different pattern as well that you can use for a quilt top. So let me take you through how you actually do it. And before I go, you know the usual, don't forget to like, subscribe, and of course give it a thumbs up. And leave a comment for me. I loved always hearing your comments and what you thought about the project. So thank you for joining me once again, and I'll show you some pictures with the bag at the end of the tutorial. So stay tuned for that. Bye for now, and I'll take you through. To make the zipper tote bag, we need a jelly roll strip. I have taken 4 contrasting colors of jelly roll strips. Now you can make this scrappy, or you can use some of leftover jelly rolls that you have from a particular line of fabric. It's entirely down to you. Once you stitch it together, I have 4 here. It should work out to be 8.5 in length, and I'm going to count 8.5 across. This will give me an actual square. All right, so 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8.5, and I was going to double check and count again. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. Now I like to do that because I don't like wasting the fabric, so it costs nothing to count twice. Make sure you got a sharp blade on. You know, I rarely change my blade until it starts doing that. Okay, so I have already cut the 3, so we need 4 in total. Now we're going to do a block format for this. Now I call this a twist and turn, and so you need to use the most prominent colors with your jelly rolls. So however you lay them out, bear in mind that you can either use the first or the bottom strip to form the pattern that I'm going to use. Now you can start with the pink there, and put it on that side there. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing, and that one goes there. Sorry, I keep twisting off myself. There you go, that way, and that way. My sewing machine is in the way. I'm just drag this over a bit. There you go. So that's simply what we're going with. So you can see why I said you need to ensure that the most prominent design is on the edge, okay, or the most prominent color. That way it really stands out. Now if you wanted to change it and use this one instead, you can. It doesn't really matter how you actually do it. It's entirely down to you what you use, but whatever works. Okay, so obviously as you can see, the darker one gives it a darker shade of tone in the middle. Now this is a really brilliant pattern for a quilt top, so you can do that as well. So imagine if you make this as a particular block, it makes a very large block for a quilt top, and you can get your quilt top completed quite quickly. As it stands in this particular design, I do like it for a quilt top, but we're going to make a bag today. So what we're going to do now is to stitch it front sides together, and this is why we need it to be a square. Okay, so you must make sure that whatever the height is, that you cut it along the width. So we're going to stitch it front sides together, and I'm going to leave it at this particular one, and I'm referring to the color on the end. So front sides together, and again a 1/4 inch seam. I haven't got my normal feet on. When I say normal feet, I haven't got my 1/4 inch foot on. I've just got my standard foot on for the sewing machine. So that's fine, as long as you can average for yourself wear a 1/4 inch, or you can use the measurement on your sewing machine. Okay, so that's the first one down, and then make sure you put it back in its position so that you don't get yourself confused, because it's quite easy to do that when you're making patchwork or sewing blocks together. So just take your time. Now what we're going to do is, once we've stitched this all together, we are going to trim this down because it's a really large bag at the moment, and I'm thinking the use for this bag is, if you go to sewing classes, it's an ideal bag to take to your class, or something you can go shopping with. If you go to the market, etc., something to put all of your fresh produce in. So yeah, I think having a nice homemade tote bag is, on many occasions, very, very nice. I mean, a lot of people tend to ask you, where did you get your bag from? And you can say quite proudly, I made it myself. So yeah, why not? And it's also another way of using up extra fabric. Or leftover fabric from a project. Jelly rolls again are great for things like that. You can also turn this particular pattern into a wall hanging or a table runner. You can reduce the size of the jelly rolls, or you can cut smaller strips rather than 2.5. You can probably do 1.5 or 2 inches. Makes the strips a lot more smaller, and again makes smaller blocks for your table runner. So again, will look absolutely lovely in that particular pattern. So I'm just putting it all together just to sew it together to make that very large block. Okay, so that is what it looks like. So just as we originally had the idea of it for. And that looks really pretty actually. I'm loving the pink at the end. So what I'm going to do is to just trim down the edges and make sure the block is the same size, and then give it a nice press. Now we are going to quilt this so that it looks a lot more better rather than just leaving it. Now what I often find with jelly rolls is that it allows you to do very good quilting patterns in between those restricted space there, because it's a measurement, and it's a good way to practice doing your free motion quilting if you're not confident in doing it at the moment. So what I'm going to do is trim it down, or square it up I should say, so that it's a nice size. As it stands, it is 16, so I think I'm just going to trim it down to 15 inches square. Just make it a little bit smaller than being such a very large bag. So I'm going to do that now. just making sure I measure all corners on the mat so it's nice and squared off properly. I was going to take about 1/4 inch off the edge there because I want all of the edges to be equated on both sides. I'll just move my machine out the way. I'm just turning it so I can do that. So again, I'm going to take 1/4 inch off on this side. I'm using the mat here just to make sure that I'm taking 1/4 inch off. Do the other side. Now you don't have to do it the way I'm doing it. I'm making it a lot more difficult than it actually is. It's quite simplistic, but I just don't want to move myself from out of shot of the camera to do this, hence the reason why I'm doing it this way. So and I really need to change these blades. I mean, it's just pure laziness that I haven't changed it. Literally pure laziness. Again, so I'm literally lining up to the end, and I am simply measuring 1/4 inch off. So I've done it 4 times, so that should take away my inch off the square. Okay, let's get rid of all these bits now. Now the next thing what we're going to do is to measure the same for our back, or backing in this case. So we're going to treat this as a quilt top. So I need the same size. And I'm just going to put this down and just simply cut it. So I'm just going to measure this again, or this is the most laziest way of doing this. So I'm just going to measure that, and look at that, it is exactly the same height. Now, because I know I'm going to be quilting this, I really should have it extended. So it should be, your backing fabric should be bigger than your quilt top. So I'm going to refer to it as a quilt top because I want to quilt this. So I am just simply going to cut around it. I'm not going to use my ruler. Just going to cut around it so I get that square, so that I can simply quilt it, because this is not my backing fabric. When I say backing, what I'm referring to, because I'm making a bag, is not the last fabric or my inner fabric for my lining. It is just the fabric I'm going to use as my backing so I can do the quilting. So that's that. Now what we need to do now is simply, I'm going to iron my quilt top here. Okay, so now that's ironed. Now you can use some scrap batting for this, and I am going to just cut some batting and literally just put it onto the fabric here. And you can literally see that it's scrap pieces from previous quilt, and I'm just going to lay it on. Now you can do a zigzag and bind this together, so that way you don't have to worry about it moving, but I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just simply going to lay it on top each other like that. So I think it's going to be fine. I'm not entirely worried about it. So I'm just going to lay, in fact I'm going to use another piece because that one seems a little bit skinny. So again, this is just scrap batting here, or wadding, whatever you refer to it as. Right, that's a better size. And this is another way again of using up your batting if you have left over. Right, so that's that. You can do this in two ways. You can pin it on, or you can simply add some spray and spray on, but it's such a small piece, I usually just add some pins to it. To be honest, I do not glue when it's just small piece. I just pin it on, to be honest, but you can glue it. It's just, that's just my preference. And I don't use safety pins either. I just use ordinary pins, straight pins. Now just bear in mind though that you will have to move these pins once you are quilting. So I'm going to leave that now. I think that's fine. Now, so before we start quilting, there's a few things we need to get ready. Now, if you wanted to quilt the back also, so you will then need to cut more of the jelly rolls and then do the same thing. So you'll need to cut 4 jelly rolls, cut it down to the same size, and then quilt the back separately. So you'll make another piece of these, so you'll have a whole quilted bag. All right, but for now, okay, so you need some interfacing. Okay, and this is, as I said before, is 33 inches in length by 2.5. All right, you need some interfacing. Remember, with the interfacing, there is a glue side and a plain side. So the glue side, it needs to be the same size as well as the fabric, and that way you can iron it all together so that it stays put and it doesn't move. So all I have done is cut the interfacing and the fabric to 2.5 by 33 in length, and then iron them all together, and you need to do that for 2 of them. All right, so what we're going to do now is simply to fold the edge in on both sides. So I'm going to do a fingerprint demonstration because I'm going to go over to the iron and do this. I'm going to just fold it in about 1/4 inch on both sides, and then iron it all the way down, and then that side as well, and iron it all the way down. And then once I am there, I am simply going to bring both edges together. So let's see if I can do this right now. So like that, and bring both edges together so you get that pleated handle look there. So that's what we're aiming for. All right, so I'm going to go do that now, and then I'll come back and show you what the next stages are. Okay, so I'm going to sew the back for the bag now, but before I do that, I just wanted to show you the handle that I've prepped. So again, the interfacing is in the middle, and I've measured both of them the same, and as explained before, I have just simply ironed in both edges at 1/4 inch and then fold them together and then put a hot iron on top of it to give me that length. So I've done it to both of them. Now we're going to top stitch. We can do a decorative stitch at the for top stitching, or we can just do an ordinary plain stitch. It's entirely down to you. All right, so I'll leave that at the side for the moment, and then I'm going to just move on to the bag. Now for the bag, I've taken the balance of my jelly roll strip and simply just cut it in half, and so before it would have been like this. Okay, so I've cut it in half, and I'm going to turn it upside down, so I have just varying sort of color scheme going on here, where it's the pinks at the top and the bottom there. I've also taken up some extra scraps or some extra bit of the jelly roll and measured the length there for the top there, and the same thing for that side there as well. I've also then going to add some of the black fabric in because I have that on my handle, and I'm going to add it to the sides there. And I also need this one as well going in there, because what I'm literally doing here is making up the original size for the actual front of my bag. So I'm making up the back, and to be honest, you can decide which area is the back or the front, because it looks nice as it is in this particular layout also. All right, so I'm going to stitch this together. So first of all, I'm going to start with these two together, and again a 1/4 inch. Now my seams are nesting because obviously when I ironed it one way, and because I've cut them, they're all facing the opposite direction. So 1/4 inch, and again I'm going to average because I haven't got my 1/4 inch foot on, but what I have done is move my needle over to the right, so then it gives me an average of 1/4 inch, and I'm also going to use my 1/4 inch measure on my sewing machine, so then that keeps me in check. Okay, so that's that. So I'm just going to finger press it so that it lays nice and flat at the back, because I want the seams to go to either side. It doesn't really matter as long as the seams lays flat on the back. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is then add this one on. And I'm going to do that for both of the edges. Any extra, I'm just simply going to trim off. Okay, lovely. So again, that's fine. I'm just going to finger press it the way it wants to go. I'm not worried about forcing it back. And again on this side again. Again, line it up, make sure you keep it straight. Now what I'm going to do is just simply cut off those extra bits there. On this side as well. Let me fold it over, and I'm only folding it over so I get that nice straight cut, and then use the original fabric there as my guide. Okay, put that to the side. Again, I'm just going to finger press it the way it wants to go, make sure it's nice and flat. And what I'm going to do now is simply add on this particular one. So again, it's front sides together. And I'm sewing from the back so I can see all of those rough seams there, so I know exactly what I'm doing. Everything I can see is lined up straight, because sometimes when you sew with the seams against the actual metal plate there, it tends to move it. So I'm just going to turn it the other way so I can see it doesn't move as well. And again, just sew. I'm going to cut yet again. And fold that back. And the next one goes on. So these are all scraps of jelly rolls here, and I just love using up my scrappy fabric. again now. Right, so that's that. So we got one more, well I should say two more now. I'm going to add the black fabric on now, and then once I've done that I'm going to give it a nice press and smoothen the whole thing out. I'm just going to clip a bit of thread that's on there. Now I could have remained with the same color, but I just wanted to add the black to it because, as I said, the black handle is there and I just didn't want to not use it, to be honest. Don't see the point in not making full use of everything. Again, as much as it's scrappy, I still want to coordinate, you know, and make it look like one piece, in the sense that it's not so much of an obvious scrappy look, if you get what I'm saying. I like disguising things to an extent when it comes to being scrappy. For me, scrappy implies that all of the fabric is of different color, sizes, etc. And you can hear all of those seams there as the needle goes over it. Right, so again, same applies. It's a beautiful sunny day here today. Usually in England you get very much overcast weather and it's dull and grey, but today no complaints. It's a beautiful sunny warm day. It's a lovely summer's day. We've been having very cloudy weather in the past 2 weeks, and I hate it when it gets like that. It's just so depressing. But I cannot complain today. Well, I don't usually complain. I moan. I moan because I just like, oh, this weather. You know, it's just indoor weather all the time sometimes. But today's a nice day. And I chose to spend it with you, quilting. Well, in this case, sewing. Right, so again, turn it over and I'm going to cut it. And so what I'm going to do now is open this all out and iron it. And then we're going to do the same thing as we did for this one, because then we are going to quilt both of them. So we will literally have a quilted tote bag. So again, for this one, remember you need the same size, okay, as the actual front here. And again, I'm going to call this my quilt top just because it's easier to reference it that way. So my quilt top and my back is the same size, but however I've made my batting or wadding slightly bigger. So you're going to do the same for this one here also, okay? And then once we've quilted it, we're going to trim it down to both of them to the same size, and then we can start constructing the bag together. Right, so let's go back to this now. So I'm just simply going to do a decorative stitch, and I usually go for zigzag, and it's easier, it's quicker. Now you can go for something a little bit more nicer, it's entirely down to you, but I'm going to go for zigzag because the handles are very much a floral print, and sometimes with these decorative stitches on floral background prints it tends to be lost. I'm using a pink cotton for this. Okay, so I'm going to start with the quilting for the back. Now before we move forward, I just wanted to show you the straps that I've already completed. So what I did was did a zigzag stitch and a straight stitch at the top there and a straight stitch there also. So I did that on both of them. Okay, so let's move on to the quilting now. So this is the back. All right, so again I have my backing, my batting or wadding, and my top here. So I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm going to try and do, well, not try, I'm going to do the same quilt pattern on moving forward. So whatever I do on this side, I'm going to do on the other side, just to keep it uniform. So I have a closed toe foot for my free motion quilting foot on, because there are open toes, but I've used the closed toe one, and I've already selected my free motion quilting. And with my machine, it selects the stitch, not the stitch length, but the tension automatically for me. And I'm going to lower the feed dogs now because I forgot to do that. Okay, right, so that's done. Okay, I can see that's down. So I'm just using a light pink, and I'm still moving on with the grey at the bottom. So there you go. I mean, to be honest, with the bottom thread is not so much important because the back here is not going to be shown. All right. So I'm just going to put my gloves on, and that prevents me from slipping with trying to hold the fabric or the top in place. And I'm going to start. I'm going to do some wishbones at the bottom there, and I'm going to start at the corner there. So the idea here is to make this movement. So you're going, and just tuck that under. So you're going up and turning down. Okay, just over and over. So you're going to start and turn over or do a curl and go back on yourself. So let's see if you can pick that up in the camera. Now, as I said before, that when you use a jelly roll strip, it allows you to be able to quilt easily because it has that restricted area for the movement. So I'm going to do that now. Now you can see that, I'm just going to pivot this around. You can see that I'm not close to the top, and I started a little bit wide and short. Normally it's curled in a bit more tight there. Now I'm sitting in an awkward position at the moment because I'm trying to get the camera to see the view rather than me be comfortable, but you get the point what I'm trying to say. So up and turn, back down, turn. So hopefully you can see that coming through there. Then down again. I'm just going to get rid of that thread there. And again, so I'm going to move it slower. So down. I'm going to do a little swirl. Come up, swirl again. All right, so I'm going to stop there now. So I'm going to turn the fabric in a position that I can continue rather than me stopping. So I'm just going to do squiggly lines, or I can do curls or swirls, anything really, rather than just breaking the thread. Okay, so I am just going to do some straight lines here, and the reason why I've chosen that is because I just noticed these sort of box squares and straight lines there. So I'm going to work with the fabric there. So again, there, stop, turn, stop, turn, and notice my needle is stopping in the position down. Okay, and I also got the pivot selector on, in the sense that once I stop, the free motion foot goes up so that I can turn the fabric. And some machines, what they tend to do is that once you take a foot off the presser foot, it does a last stitch. So when I stop, I'm literally taking my feet off the presser foot, but the machine does a very last stitch. So just watch and observe it and you'll see. So I stop, See, it takes another last stitch there. So what you need to do is just wait till the machine does that stitch, because if you move the fabric, it will then give you a crooked stitch then. Now I don't have to stop, I can just continue going, but I'm demonstrating here, so the importance is to ensure that you understand what I'm trying to say. And last one there. Now I could go back over there and do another zigzag, but I like the way that looks. I'm happy with the way that looks there. So I'm going to again travel on the end here and come up to this point. Right, so what I'm going to do now is just some curly lines backwards and forwards. So I'm going to start there, go down, turn, just up and down. Now I am only using white so that you can see it, okay? So this is going to be very visual on the bag. Now if you don't want your quilting patterns to show up, use a very contrasting color to the fabric that you are working with. Well, you can get curvy with this if you want, and just make it wavy rather than doing it straight as I'm doing here, and I think that looks better. So just relax your shoulder, do it smooth, and just do it wavy rather than keeping it straight, and just try to keep the spacing consistent. Okay, so I'm back to my next point now. Okay, so now I need to think about what design I need to do for the next one. So I can move on to doing some loop-to-loops, I can do some pebbles, I can do some number 8s that I call them. You can do anything really. So while what we can do is probably do a combination of things. All right, so that's something I do as well sometimes. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with some pebbles, and then I'm going to move on to another design, and then start with pebbles again, and then another design. So to do the pebbles, I usually make a small like that, and then I will travel along that original one and go there. And all I'm doing is going over the previous line. Now what you can do is go over the line to make it more prominent. Okay, so you want that circle or those pebbles to really show up. And I'm just tracing over it, and then I'm going to make another one. There, I'm just filling the spaces. Okay, now what I'm going to do now is a little straight line. So I'm just going to come across, and I'm going to go down there. Now I can see a space there, so I'm going to fill in all those spaces. Okay, so I'm just going to go back up and then move across, come back down again. I'm just outlining it. I'm just going to come back across again, travel along there, and again I'm going to do my pebbles again. And all I'm doing is just tracing over those circles, just going over them, because I like to make it more prominent. So you can do big circles, you can do small ones and fill in the spacing. Right, so I'm going to travel back up. I'm going to stop there and come straight down. So I know that you know, that's my cutoff point for the circles, and just fill in those spaces there. You can go over again, making those circles really prominent so that you can see it. Now all you're doing is just tracing it now, and I like that look. I'm going to find my way back, travel across, come back along there. Now there's a joint there, so I'm going to go over a bit gentle. Notice how I'm pulsing it. Okay, and I'm going to go right down the middle. Okay, now I'm going to do something else now. Okay, so just show you what that looks like. Okay, so the next thing we can do is let's see, mind is gone blank now. That usually happens as well when you start a free motion quilt. All of a sudden your mind goes blank. It's like, okay, what I'm going to do. And it happens to me all the time, hence the reason why I tend to do a pattern before I actually start. So what I will do is some loop-de-loops, I think, or should I just leave that for another area? Probably be best to leave it for another area. So 1 2 3 4. No, I think I'll do the loop-de-loops there and there so that everything mirror each other. So I'm going to do some loop-de-loops, but I'm going to do some flowers at the end of it. So I'm going to do a little curl, make a circle, all right, and then I'm just going to do little petals. I'm going to go in, touch that circle and back out. Okay, and then when I feel I've done enough, then I'm just going to branch off, do another circle, do my petals, just touch that circle. Okay, I'm just going to branch off, do a little one there, one there as well. I'm trying to fill the spaces. That's what I'm trying to do. I don't want to leave any place unquilted. So I'm going to travel back along there. Now going right in the ditch. So I'm pulsing to move across because obviously there's seam lines there. So I'm going to get right in that ditch. Okay. Again, wait till the machine does its last stitch. Come off, make my circle again, and then start my petals. Branch off, make a little circle. Branch off again, make another one. And just take your time, because remember, you are doing the motion. This is not the machine that's the feed dogs are moving it. This is your stitches here. This is like your sort of personal stitching you're doing. So you have to maneuver it in the way that you see fit. So take your time. Slow down when you need to slow down. Okay. So what I want to do now is just branch off, make squiggly lines, and go there. Right. I'm going to travel along there. Again, make squiggly lines there because I'm trying to fill the space. All right. So what I'm going to do now is travel back to that starting point there. And again, now I need to decide what I'm going to do here now. So because I've already done pebbles there, I'm just going to do some simple loop-to-loops now. And that's simple, moving in all directions. If you feel you find yourself in a knot, work your way around. All directions. So you go one way, then the other way, then the next way, until you fill that spot. All right. Again, I'm going to travel back till I get to that starting point. So I'm going to do now some curly eights. I can't remember exactly what I usually call them, but I'm going to do some number eights was what I usually call them, because I'm just trying to figure out which way to start it. And imagine this is imagine this has been a big quilt, you know. So these are the things you're gonna have to figure out. A quilt, you've got the whole quilt to consider, and you won't be able to maneuver it like that. Obviously it's a small project, so you can do that, but with a big quilt you're restricted, and this is when you have to really make sure you smoothen it out like that so that you have that leverage to work with. So I'm going to go up. So I'm just making really big circles here now with this. This is what I was not intending on doing, but I'm going to go with it. Okay, and again, if you feel that you need to do your design with your hand, by all means do so, just so that you can get it right. All right, and these are all the things that I actually do, and if it's something I started I wasn't intending on doing, trust me, I am going to continue with that so that it is intentional. So don't start something and you think, oh no, I make a mistake and I'm going to take it out. Never do that. Just continue with what you were intending to do. So I'm going to make it nice and big, so I fill that space. All right, so I'm going to travel back down there in a minute, but I'm going to go ahead and do what I did originally with this particular one. So I'm trying to keep it consistent like I did there. So I'm back on the same area. Stop. Now you can do a ruler if you have a ruler to do this, but I'm not going to worry. It's such a small piece. You can take your time and do straight lines. Now if you wanted, you can actually fill in some of those triangles, but I think we would leave it because it will make the quilting quite dense then. And I do like the puffy look. I do like, that's one of the reasons why I use poly down, which is polyester with a small amount of cotton in it, because you get that loft, and I do like that loft feel. Okay, so what I mean is that if you wanted to do probably pebbles or small quilting lines there, you can do that, and you can do so you can do one, miss, do one, miss, or quilt, miss, quilt, miss, quilt, miss, so you still get that pattern throughout there. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do now is to travel along and come back to where I want to get started. So I'm going to travel along, move up a bit. Just going to move this pin out the way. Now I tend to quilt from certain areas. When I say areas, I mean certain sides of the quilt. So because I'm right-handed, sometimes I like to start from the left and work my way towards the throat space. It really depends. As I said, with a quilt you don't necessarily have the opportunity to do that. You may necessarily have to learn to quilt upside down or right side up, so to speak, right? So but it's a small piece, so I'm going to make full use of that and quilt it in the way that makes me happy. So again, I'm just traveling along and I'm just moving these pins as I go. And one of the reasons that's good to travel along the is that it smashes it down also, but it also gives you that loft in between the layers. So that's what I'm doing as well. Right, so I'm just going to travel back here and then I'm going to get started. Or should I continue there? Right, since I'm at this one, what I'm going to do is my excuse me, flower meander again. So again, and tuck in every time. I'm going to come out again, make a nice loop there, and go in with my petals. Then I'm going to come out. Okay, again travel out, make a little loop. Remember, it doesn't have to be big. You can control the size of it. So if you need to, if you find yourself in an area where you can't get out of, just travel. That's all you need to do, is to travel. I'm just going to make squiggly lines just to fill that space. And I can see that there's a seam there, so I'm just going to pulse over it, and that's what happens. Well, did you notice it actually, the seam actually pushed it, literally pushed it, and I can show you that stitch there. Something like that I will unpick because that's easy. Okay, right, so I'm going to make my way back down here. I'm just going to go a little bit slower because there's lots of seams and I don't want to break the needle, so I'm just going to take my time. And notice how I'm pulsing that just to get to where I want to go. I'll travel back here. Okay, so I'm at where I want to be now. So I'm going to do that figure 8 movement there, ribbon candy. That's the name I've been trying to remember. So again, just trace it out in your mind. So let me just move this here. So what I tend to do, if for some reason my mind goes blank, you know, I just go up, I trace it down, and it's just to refresh your memory. Go up again, trace it down, because I'm visualizing what I'm actually doing. All right, so let's get started on that. Let me see if I can do it without my gloves, because sometimes it's easier. So down, making sure it touches, down again, and you can do this both ways. You can actually just let it go right next to it and let it touch, or you can let it overlap, which gives a nice pattern as well. So all I'm doing is just circles at the top, coming down. It's like an S. Again, go back up. Keep that speed consistent. Keep the hand movement consistent as well. So remember, the slower you move your hands, the smaller the stitches will be, and I can actually hear that the bobbin has finished. I so wish it had finished at the end there. Now, wouldn't that have been great? Okay, so you get the idea. So what I'm going to do now is change my bobbin, and then I will literally go around there with a very simplistic quilting pattern, which I'll come back and show you. So give me a moment. So I'm going to cut my thread. Okay, so let's carry on with the edges now. So I'm just going to do some swirls on the border themselves. Okay, so I've finished off this particular one here, and so now I'm just going to come down and start my swirls on the black fabric. So again, just go around, and I'm keeping this very simple, just making a swirl, or go in, make sure you leave room to come back out. Don't go too close to the edge. As long as you give yourself space to come back out and do that movement. Notice how I'm keeping that speed with the needle just going up and down. It's just that constant speed, yeah? There's no hesitancy there, so the movement is nice and smooth. In and out. I'm going to stop and turn again, so I can go into the corner and get that corner done. Now this area is bigger, so obviously I'm going to move around a little bit more now. Bigger, just trying to fill that space. And I'm deliberately going one way, to be honest, because there's not much space here, so I'm just taking my time and go one swirl movement around. Okay, so I'm going to continue with this and then we'll move on to doing the other one, and then we will compile the whole tote bag. Okay guys, so I have quilted both of the bags. So this is the back and this is the front. All right, so I mean, you can wear it however you choose. I mean, you can choose this as the back or the front. It doesn't really matter, to be honest. They're both just as beautiful. Now to put on the handles is what we're going to do next. So I've already clipped on the first one here, and the bag measures 14 by 15. Okay, so 15 down, 14 across. So all I've done is literally count. So these, I'm going to use my mat. So 1 2 3 4 5, and I've pinned it there, and again 1 2 3 4 5, and I've pinned it there. Okay, so 5 inches in, I've pinned it there. So I'm going to stitch across there about 1/4 inch down on both, and I'm going to go backwards and forwards just to make sure that that is actually in there. And I'm going to do the same for the next one, and then we will move on to what we're doing. So usually what I will do is put the other one right opposite like that, and then add on the strap, so then I know exactly. So rather than having to measure it again, I will then just simply put it on right opposite. Now what you need to be mindful of is that whatever side you're putting up, so obviously there's an underside and a top side because you have a top stitch and an understitch. So, and if you don't have the same colors, so for example I have gray in my bobbin, and for my top stitching I have pink, it's a very light pink that looks like white. So I need to decide which color I want visual, so in front. I also need to make sure that when I lay this down it's really nice and flat, so I'm making sure that I go all the way around it so it's flat, so it's not twisted. So I'm just going to move this one out the way at the moment. So I'm going to count to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to put it that way. And pin that right in the middle there. And the other one. And I'm going to make sure that my strap is nice and flat, so that way it is not twisted. And I'm going to count again, make sure this is centered. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it goes there, and pin that on. Okay, so a 1/4 inch seam on all 4, and then we're going to move on to the next. So when you do your 1/4 inch seam, make sure you go backwards and forwards at each time so that you make sure you secure that in there. So we're going to do that now. All right, so we're moving on to the lining for the bag now. So we're going to leave the front and back for a moment. Now what I have done here is added some interfacing to the wrong side of the lining. Now the lining measures the same size as the front and back of the bag. Now remember, when you're adding some interfacing, you need to make sure that you're ironing with no steam, just a hot iron, and you're putting the interfacing face side down on the wrong side, and the side you're putting down is the side that has either shiny or bumpiness on it. Okay, and then you will iron it on until it is actually adhesed onto the fabric. Okay, so we're going to move on to doing the pockets now, and I have let me just measure this very quickly. So it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 and a half by 6 fabric here, and I'm going to make an inner pocket, and I'm using the same fabric for the lining. Okay, so you're going to fold it wrong side, and I'm going to stitch all the way around, but I'm going to leave an opening there. So I'm just putting an X to remind myself where I need to stop. So I'm going to start from there, stitch all the way around, start from there, stitch all the way around, making sure to back stitch at the corners there so that it's nicely sealed in. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back and we're going to add it to the interfacing. So I'm going to go do that now. Okay, so I have made the pockets. Okay, and I've turned it right side out. I have pushed out all of the corners to ensure it's nice and pointy and not sort of rounded or flat. This one's a little bit flat here, but I'm not too bothered about it. And then I've ironed it shut, so I still have my opening at the bottom there. Okay, so I'm just ironed it nice and smooth. Now I'm going to put it on one of the lining here again with the interfacing. And because it's already got some lines here, I'm going to use what I have, and this is roughly about, and I think it's about 4 inches. So I'm literally going to put it this way. I can choose which side I want it on, whether it's this side or this side. Okay, I'm not too fussed, and I'm going to find the center point. So I'm going to fold this in half, give it a little bit of finger press, and do the same for the actual lining here. Fold it in half, give it a good finger press so it actually creases where I want it to lay. Open it back out, and I'm putting the opening at the bottom there. Okay, now if you want, you can go ahead and top stitch the top there, and it just helps finish it off and makes it nice and neat. So I'm going to do that now. Okay, so that's done now. So, and again, obviously you couldn't see because it's a pink color and it's going to be very nice and light, but trust me, it is there. So I'm just taking off those extra bits of thread, and I'm going to lay the crease size together so you can see that creased area there and on my pocket. So I'm going to go right up to this line because that's my 4 inches from the top. So I'm going to go right there, and I'm just going to pin it down so that it stays. And I'm going to stitch it in place now. What I'm also going to do is to divide the pockets up, so I can either make it in the sense that I have three pockets, or I can just stitch right down the middle and I have 2 pockets, or you can divide the pockets down and give yourself 3, so you can have one for your mobile phone and, you know, other things. But I think I'm going to leave it as 2. So I am going to stitch that first before I stitch all the way around, okay? And always stitch coming towards you. And the reason why I'm saying that is because it is open there. If I were to stitch here first, what I will find is that the pressure of the machine will pleat it up. Let me just repeat what I said. So I am going to stitch from the middle there all the way down, and what I said, because I know that was out of shot, so you can either divide the pockets into 3 or you can have it in 2. So I'm going to use my crease line there and just do a stitch all the way down. And this is the stage you do it, because if you do it after you stitch all the way around there, what you will find is that if you now decide to stitch, you will get a little pleat there, and in that case then you will have to start from this end and then stitch away from you, so you can actually see the fabric. So if I stitch towards me, you'll see the fabric building up, but if you stitch away from you, it goes away. So you can decide whether you want the 2 pockets or you want 3, okay? And you will do the same thing and stitch it down. Either way, divide it down and decide, and I can leave that up to you, but I'm just going to leave it as 2. Okay, so once that's done now, the next objective is to go all the way around and actually stitch that pocket on. All right, so I have my 2 pockets there now. It's nicely stitched on. So I'm going to go back stitch there, go all the way around, back stitch at the top, and then that's the pockets completed. So I'm going to go do that now, and I'll come back and show you what it actually looks like. Okay, so pockets are on, as you can see, nice and sturdy there. I have the 2 fabrics, so I have the 2 lining fabrics here, and again they both have been ironed on with the interfacing. Now we're going to box the corners off, and we're going to do the same for all pieces. So we need that done for these as well, so this one and this one obviously, and then for our interface, sorry, our lining. So I have a ruler here that's 2-inch square, and it's 6 obviously, so 1 2 3 4 5 6. All right, so I'm just going, in fact it's 9. What I'm going to do is just line it up at the end, just to make sure you can actually see what I'm doing and get in the camera shot. So I'm going to line it up at the edge, so the edge of the fabric to the end of the line with the ruler there. So that's my 2 inches squared. So I'm just going to line that up there, and I'm just going to draw a line there and then mark it down. Now it doesn't matter if you use an ordinary pen. In fact, I can actually even use my board, because then I still have my 2-inch strip, and it's actually correct, so I can see that there. And again on this side, line it up to the end and the bottom line, and simply mark it across. And what we're going to do is box the bottom on, and that means we're simply going to allow the bag to sit flat on the base. Okay, so I'm just going to cut this off, and all of them are going to be the same. So all 4 pieces is going to be the exact same. And I'm cutting both of them at the same time. I've actually pinned this as well, so even though I'm moving it around, it's not going to come out of place because I've pinned it in place there, so it doesn't move. So again, right on that line. This scissors is so sharp. I love the sound it makes when it actually cuts in the fabric. So beautiful. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do that to the next two, and I'll come back and show you what happens next. Okay, so now all of the pieces, so you should have 4 pieces in total, have been cut for the bottom for the boxing. So I'm going to put some pieces to side at the moment so we can work on putting the bag together. So I'm going to put the one with the pocket, and I'm going to assume that this is the back of the bag, and put that to the side for the moment. And I'm going to be working with this one here. So what you want to do is to have the handles nice and flat, everything laid out properly. Okay, and what we're going to do now is add on this bit here, but before we do that, we're going to attach our zip. So the importance here is to lay the zip front sides together. So you want to see the zipper pull facing down. So this is your zipper pull here, and you want it facing down on the fabric. So I'm going to put it edge to edge. Now obviously this one is longer, so I'm going to allow it to stick off. And when I say stick off, I mean extend beyond the edge of the bag. Okay, so I'm going to put it like so. So I'm using the edge here. I'm not using this end. So the furthest, the end towards you should be on top of the bag. I'm just going to make sure it's centered on both sides. It doesn't really matter because we are going to trim off these extra bits here towards the end. All right, so I'm just going to make sure it's there, and I'm going to use some wonder clips just to clip it in place while I make my adjustments there. So it must be front sides together, remember that. So it must be face down. Okay, I'm going to bring it close to the edge because I want it to be neat and tidy. Now what we're going to do now is add on our interface lining fabric here, and we're going to put it again front sides together, obviously, because we want both pretty sides of the fabric touching each other, and it should be lined up the same way at the bottom, so everything should look the same. If you find that it's like this, okay, then it's obviously wrong. So both edges of the front of the bag and the inner lining of the bag should look the same. So I'm going to lay it on top there, and again I'm going to center it, make sure it's lined up on both edges there. Okay, and I'm going to use my wonder clips yet again to hold it in place. Now this is a point where you need your zipper foot or zipper feet and to add it onto the machine. However, if you haven't got a zipper foot for your machine, what you can do is adjust the needles. So the needles many times can move from left to right and center. So then you adjust the needle to the side where you're actually going to position it down. So we need this to be probably 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. Okay, so that we get a nice clean stitch, and all of the 3 layers have actually been caught, and you'll be able to feel it. Now the advantage with the zipper feet is that it butts up right next to the zip pull there. You can actually feel all the teeth. So when you have your zip feet on, it actually lands right there on that notch, so it doesn't go over. So again, that in itself is a guide, but again, if you haven't got that, use 1/8 of an inch or just less than 1/4 of an inch to guide you so that you don't go beyond that zipper teeth there. So what we're going to do now is again stitch all the way down, all the way down, all the way down. Okay, so in effect it should look like that with the extra for the zip visual, so that the other two pieces can then be added on. So let's go do that now. Just do a lovely stitch all the way there. Okay. All right, so this has now been stitched on. So what we're going to do now is fold it back, and we literally want to really press that seam down. We want to roll that seam down at the back there, really all the way nice and flat as possible, because now we're going to top stitch this. Okay, now again, if you want to add a decorative feature stitch here, you can, but I don't usually worry about that. A simple straight stitch will be suffice. Again, and this straight stitch also helps to keep the handle again nice and secure. So what I'm doing right at the moment is just sort of finger pressing it down just to make sure it stays nice and flat. Now when you go to the sewing machine to do your top stitch, you need to make sure that your handles are going away from the bag. So it should not be over the bag like that. It should be away from the bag. So you'll do your top stitch there again, less than 1/4 of an inch there all the way down. And again, this stitch needs to be nice and neat because as you can see, it is very visual. All right, so again, make sure that stitch is nice and neat, and you're going to stitch that all the way down there. Okay, now once you've done that, you then need to do the same thing to the other side. So let me stitch that now and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, so it's all stitched on now. There's one thing I need to just address very quickly. When you are doing your top stitch and you are stitching from the top there all the way down, okay, you need to ensure that once you need to just give this a bit of a tug. Now the reason why I say that is if you don't do that, what you would find is that on the back here you will find that the inner lining just bunches up there, and you will have this thick sort of fold there, and then to the bottom here will be short. All right, so what I usually do when I'm making a bag is once I am stitching my top stitch, I will literally just hold it up like that and use this and just tug on it. So give it a nice taut pull like that. Can you see the fabric move? Okay, so that's what usually happens. So you need to just keep it nice and taut all the way. So you start up there so that once you have completed sewing, it's going to be nice and flat at the back. Now to do the other bit now, you need to just add on this one, front sides together, and again line it all up. And this one again, making sure that the lining is looking at you. All right, so then that way both of them are all the same. So you can see everything should be the same. So again, what you're going to do is then stitch all the way up there, turn it right side out, and then again do your final top stitch. So I'm going to go do that now, and then we're almost getting ready to complete the whole bag. Okay, so they're both stitched on now. So we have our handles, the front and back, and our inner lining. So now what we're going to do is to stitch the bag close. All right, so let's fold that back, and so we need to fold it like so. So it should be on the wrong side. Now an important thing here to note is to open up the bag, because we don't want to stitch it close with the zipper pull outside. So make sure you zip open the bag so you can see the inside of it. Now I'm going to just leave it right in the middle there. Now turn it back on the other side, so I have the wrong side there and the wrong side there. So what's going to happen now is that you need to match these ends together, because obviously we've opened it. Now I'm just going to pull it down a little bit so that it's more or less near the end, but not too much near the end. So let me just show you right where it's at. So is this literally there? The only reason I'm doing that is so that I can make sure that I actually pin this together properly. So I'm just going to put a pin through that in there so I know it's nice and flat once I tilt it over. All right, so, and then I'm going to match up the ends here. Now the objective is to stitch all the way around the bag. We are not going to stitch these corners here. So these 4 corners where we have put those 2 inches squared, we are not going to actually stitch them. So I'm going to go back to my pen again, and I'm going to line this up edge to edge. I'm just going to put some pins in them so that it holds it in place. And make sure your handles are tucked away on this side, so okay, and they're out of the way. So again, just pin it, just randomly pinning it so that it is together. Now we need to leave an opening like we did when we were making the pocket, and this is to be able to turn the bag right side out. So I'm going to leave a good space because the bag is quite big, so I'm just putting an X there just to remind me not to actually sew on that area. All right, another one on that side there, so I'm just gonna, that's just my reminder, so that's really important. So we're going to excuse me, stitch from there, we're going to back stitch from there to there, and again back stitch so those edges are sealed in, and do the same thing, and we're going to use half an inch, okay, half an inch away from the edge, okay, and go all the way around. So once we have stitched this all the way around together, before we turn it right side out, we're going to clip it. We can clip it now, it's no big deal. If you just clip it like so, nice sharp scissors, and clip it off. All right, if you want, you can then use a pin to pin that together in place there so it stays nice and neat. And again with this one as well on this side, pin it, and I'm putting the teeth together because remember, however you stitch this is how it's going to stay. So you need to make sure that the zipper teeth there is laying nice and flat on top of each other. Okay, so they're all laying nice and flat on top of each other, and it's equated there. Let's flip that over. So everything is nice there, and again I'm going to pin that in place. I'm not pinning it to the edge, I'm just pinning it so that the zipper pull is actually, and the zipper itself is out of the way. All right, so that's nice and flat there, and again I'm going to literally just clip that off. But for now what we need to do is to stitch all the way around. So we're going to start there, stop there, start there, stop there, and remember we're back stitching at these points. Okay, once we've done that, we are then going to go all the way around, and the same applies at the end here. We are not going to stitch it. So again, I'm going to pin this together so that it doesn't move and everything stays in line. The only difference with this one is that we are not leaving any opening there, so this is going to be stitched all the way, hence there is no reminder markings on this side. All right, so we are only leaving an opening on the lining. So again, I'll repeat that. So we're going to literally stitch all the way around the bag. You stop again, start and back stitch, again continue there, start, back stitch to secure those stitches in, and start, back stitch there again, back stitch here again, and go all the way around, stop there, and again you're going to literally start, back stitch, stop, start, back stitch, stop. Okay, so that's what we're going to do, and then we'll be able to turn the bag right side out. So let me go do that now, and I'll come back and show you what the finished product looks like. Alright, so it's all been stitched together all the way around, except the areas where I have said to leave open. So before we can box the corners, we need to go into the area where we left open. So I'm going to put my hands in there and feel for my zipper in the middle there. Now you can do this two ways. If you feel that you're having a little bit of problems to find the zipper, you can put your fingers through there and crunch the bag up so that you can get to that zipper. But I can feel mine from this side. So I'm just going to slide it open so that I know I have enough room to turn the bag. All right, so that's fine. So it's right in the middle there now. Now what we're going to do is to box the bottoms, and I'm just going to take my pin out there because I don't want them piercing me. And all you need to do is to line up the edges. So both edges must meet there, and all you're literally going to do, let's make sure this is nice and flat. So we line it up. We can put the seams left to right so that they nest properly. And all you're going to do is literally to stitch it over it there. So I'm just going to put a pin there so that it stays. That's perfect. Right, so all I'm going to do is literally put a stitch line there, and I'm going to do that for all 4 of them. So again, I'll do that again, make sure it's open up, it's lined up together, and there's that seam there. And the bag will be trying to fight against you because obviously, you know, we've quilted it, so it's a little bit structured in the sense that it wants to stay in the shape that you originally put it in. So make those sure the seams are nested there, because you are going to see that seam. All right, once you turn the bag right side out, and it's going to put a pin. You can use your wonder clips if you want, but the pin holds it fine. And again, you can do a 1/4 inch seam just over there. So I'm going to do that for all 4 of them, and then we can come back and reveal what the bag looks like. Okay, so all 4 corners have been boxed now. Okay, as you can see there. Now what we're going to do is turn the bag right side out. So I'm going to put my hand in, and then I'm going to go through that opening I left there with the zip. And this is so important to make sure that you leave a wide opening so that you can literally pull the bag through. So I'm just going to pull it through that opening of the zip first, and then throughout the lining. And this is when you know whether your stitching has been good or not. So I'm just putting my zip back a little bit there so I have more space to get the bag through. So I'm just taking off, so it's sort of peeling off the lining there and peeling it out. So it looks a bit awkward at the moment. You're thinking, oh no, this is not right, but then you still have the bag to pull through. All right. And it may look like it's been all crumpled and rough, but it's fine. I'm just giving myself a little bit more space there to open up that bag, and again turning it right side out. And notice as I'm turning it, the interior is going inside at the same time. Okay, and I'm putting my hands through. I'm going to open up the rest of the bag now. And I'm poking out my corners, making sure everything lays nicely, and getting this one out, putting my hand in the bag, getting all the points out there. It's beginning to get its shape, definitely. So what I'm doing now, I'm putting my hand through that hole there, that original hole there, and I'm just using my fingers to poke out the corners there so that it's nice and pointed. And just to help give that bag the shape so it lays nice and flat once you have it standing up. Okay, now again, I'm now going to just fit in, just making sure my corner there is poked out as well where the zipper pull is, and at the other side. And all I'm doing now is flattening the inner, so I'm just doing that with my hands, just to flatten the inner of the bag. I'm going to get my little scissors here, and any threads that's hanging out, I'm just going to snip them. Don't pull them because you just don't know what you may unthread. So just snip them. turn it over on the front side. Now doesn't that look pretty? Absolutely beautiful. Our jelly roll bag, zipper tote bag. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just making sure, I get really fussy about my corners. I don't like them just being tucked under. So what I'm going to do is put my hand right in up into that corner there and really poke it out, because I just like it really squared off properly. So I'm just poking that out there, making sure it's done properly. I'm just a little bit iffy about it because I like the bag to look very professional as much as possible, and for me those are the little things that, you know, gives it the whole appearance of it being handmade to a really high standard. Now the next thing to do now is to again poke out your corners there from the box bottom of the actual lining. Again, any threads, just snip them off. And all you need to do now is, you can do two ways. You can hand stitch this, or you could actually do a very tiny machine stitch all the way across that. And I usually do that because if you look into most bags, they're very rarely, if not at all, hand stitch. And I'm one of these people, when I go to buy a bag, which I seldom do, I haven't bought a handbag in years because I make all my bags. Even if I want something really classy for the evening, I will make a nice beautiful clutch bag. So most of my bags, I do have other bags that I've bought over the years, but as I said, I haven't bought a new handbag in years. So I'm going to stitch that there, and then I'll come back and show you what it looks like. So you're going to hear the machine going. And again, just want this is an 1/8 of an inch stitch, just to get those two pieces together. And as I said, you can hand stitch it, but as I usually just do a nice little stitch there. Actually, that's just fine. So I'm just going to snip that out, put it back into the bag, and do the same. And this time I really need to flop it together now so that everything lines up beautifully inside there, and the lining is literally at the bottom of the bag there. Okay, and that is it. That is our bag. So I'm going to close this shut. Hear that zipper there? Absolutely beautiful. So this is our bag. So that's the front. Sorry, my apologies. That's the back, and that is the front. Doesn't that look gorgeous? You can actually see all of the quilting on the bag. Looks absolutely beautiful. Really, really gorgeous. I mean, and this is something you can actually use to practice your quilting with, you know. I think it looks absolutely gorgeous, beautifully well made. The bag can stand on its own, as you see for yourself, and that's because we've added, you know, the quilting to it. Makes the bag nice and structured. We've also added the interfacing as well, so yeah, it holds up on its own quite nicely. So I'm going to take some pictures out of it, and you can actually see what it looks like. That's the underneath. Again, you can see those seams lined up really nicely there. And you see, well, these are the important things when you come to actually buying or making your own bag. And these are the things I check for, just to make sure that it's been made properly. You know, if I were to buy a bag, you know, so if I go somewhere and I see handmade bags, I'm one of these people, I open it up to see how they've closed it, and I'm inspecting it. You know, I wouldn't dare say anything to them, but you know, it's just, when you make things for yourself, you can see the difference in your work and somebody else's work. So there you go, guys. So enjoy your jelly roll and zipper tote bag, and I shall see you in the next video. I'll take some pictures so you can actually see what it's look like. So bye for now, guys, and happy quilting.